What's up, everybody? This is Miles Turner, the Indiana Pacers. You're listening to the Paceroos Podcast. Be sure to follow @Paceroos on Twitter.
Welcome, everyone, again to the Paceroos Podcast, the only Australian NBA podcast with a bias towards the Indiana Pacers. We come to you broken men this week. We have started 0-2, and we're here to recap the first two games of the season, as well as preview the Detroit and Brooklyn games that are coming up over the next few days. My name's Adam. I'm your host today. I'm joined once again by a despondent Justin.
Hey guys, happy to be here for a nice venting session. So very disappointing. We said that anything but a 2-0 start would be acceptable, and we sit here 0-2.
And Alex, how you feeling?
Yeah, not great. Obviously, I think we're all in the same boat here, all of us Pacers fans, but still happy to be here talking Pacers nonetheless.
I think, as Worldwide Wob says on Twitter, this is a safe space.
Yeah.
I think we need to get it all out, but also be as constructive as possible. I'm here to be a little bit Mr. Positivity. You know, it's only 2 games in, but at the same time, certainly not the start that we wanted. So we'll recap the games. We'll go through a little bit of what happened and some key factors that contributed to the loss, and then we'll look at the 2 upcoming games. So we kicked off the season at home against Detroit. We lost that game 119-110. Looking at a couple of the key statistics that we'll talk about, we were out-rebounded 45-36. Out of those rebounds, 23 of them went to Andre Drummond. The shooting, 52% for Detroit, 46% for the Pacers. The free throws were 33 attempts to Detroit, 24 to Indiana. And really the key performers for those games, as I referred to, Andre Drummond had 23 points. He added 23 rebounds. He added 32 points. Luke Kennard had 30 points. Derrick Rose had 18 points and 9 assists. So looking at the game, Justin, we'll kick off with you. What stood out to you as a reason that we unfortunately dropped this game against Detroit?
Well, yeah, I think you mentioned it there, Andre Drummond's stat line. I can't remember the last time I've seen someone get over 30 points and 20 rebounds in a game. We did predict him getting high numbers because he does usually kill the Pacers. I mean, I predicted him to get 20-20, and I was wrong.
He had to one-up you.
Yeah, he had to one-up me, so I give him respect, and he still burns me. But look, I was messaging you guys throughout the game, and we just couldn't grab a rebound. The most alarming thing to me, I think, is just the effort wasn't there in Game 1, and that followed on to Game 2, which we'll speak about later. But they were just killing us on the boards. There was a big plays in the fourth quarter where we just couldn't grab a rebound, and there was one of the biggest plays with a few minutes left. I think we were making a bit of a push, a bit of a run, and they grabbed an offensive rebound back to Luke Kennard for 3, and that kind of sealed the game in a way. So extremely disappointing. There were some small positives. You don't want to just talk negatively about the whole game, but there's no other way to put it than Andre Drummond killing us, and Derrick Rose off the bench played well, and Kennard, hit 6 threes. So, wasn't a great start to our Central Division rivals.
Alex, you mentioned that the bench and the distribution of minutes was interesting. Nate McMillan did use, I think, 11 players in Game 1 against Detroit. And some of those barely played. Aaron Holiday only had 7 minutes. TJ Leaf was lucky to get 3. So how did you see the bench performance, and what talking points did you take from that?
Yeah, obviously the bench was it was hugely disappointing to say the least, but I think for the first game, Nate was definitely trying some things out. Aaron Holiday only got 7 minutes. He was 0 from 6, so probably didn't do anything to earn any more, but there was just really no production off the bench. I mean, Sumner was the leading scorer with 6 points, so, I mean, a lot of guys had 0, Leaf 0, Justin 0, Aaron 0 as well, and then our man Goga didn't even play. So I think the second unit was really disappointing. But I don't know what we really expected. I think TJ Leaf being the backup 4 is a massive concern for me. I know we talk a lot about him, but 3 points is not good enough really. And same with McDermott wasn't that great. Holiday wasn't great either. So a lot of concerns off that second unit.
I wanted to talk about that backup 4 position because it looks like, especially in that first game, Nate, used a couple of different sort of combinations at the forward positions. Obviously, TJ Warren had to leave the game early in the last quarter after he took a nasty fall on what I thought was a little bit of a dirty foul. But we had Doug McDermott, we had Justin Holiday, we had TJ Leaf, all sort of playing spot minutes at around that 4 position or guarding the opposition's or Detroit's power forward. Obviously, with a guy like Blake Griffin out, they were forced to play players like Christian Wood, Thon Maker, and Markieff Morris at that power forward position. So I think it'll be interesting. We talked about it a lot leading into the season that we didn't really know what was going to happen with that backup power forward position. We didn't see a lot of confidence in TJ Leaf from both ourselves and from people around the team that we've spoken to. And that was kind of echoed in Game 1 because TJ Leaf only played that 3 minutes. The positives for me, Domas played a massive game. He had 27 points, 13 boards. Miles had 25 points, 9 rebounds, and Malcolm Brogdon 22 points, 11 assists. So, we had contributions from 3 of our 5 starters. The other 2 in TJ Warren and Jeremy Lamb weren't necessarily at the level that you would expect.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a bit concerned about Jeremy Lamb, the way he fits offensively, but like we were speaking before the show, he's brought in to be a backup. So once Vic gets healthy and starts, Jeremy Lamb hopefully can provide that 6th-man punch that we'll need to get higher bench production. Like I was saying before, though, my main concern is just the effort. You want to watch games 1 and 2 of an NBA season and see large improvement in players that they've put in work over the off-season. And Alex, like you mentioned, TJ Leaf, we're now 2 games in, and he looks to be the same old player he was last season.
Yeah, I think the other glaring one is Aaron Holiday. He's been a really big talking point with us over the last couple of weeks. I think he got 7 minutes in the first game, none in the second game, and he was 0 for 6 in that 7 minutes. So he was unfortunately chucking it a bit against Detroit. I think that lost him a lot of confidence with the coach. It obviously did because he wasn't played a lot in the second game. And listening to an interview with Nate after the game on our friend of the podcast, Pat Boylan's Paces Sound, he did mention to Mark Boyle that we're lacking effort and lacking two-way effort. So I think with the use of TJ McConnell over Aaron Holiday in the last couple of games, especially the Cleveland game where we'll get to that, but McConnell played 20 minutes in that game and Aaron Holiday played none. We can clearly see that Nate's favouring those guys that whilst they may not necessarily be great offensive players, they provide great effort on the defensive end.
Yeah, I think we called that in maybe episode 1 or 2. We've talked about it a lot. And Nate, he loves his vets. We know this. McConnell, he's going to get more minutes than Holiday throughout the entire season. But you just can't. You can't have this guy that you're that high on. They didn't want to trade him last season. They said he's untouchable. And then you go and play him 0 minutes. So... I'm a fan of TJ McConnell. I'm sure we all are, but I think you have to play a guy like Holiday, especially when your offense is struggling like it was against the Cavs and even the Pistons as well.
Yeah, interesting that you talk about Nate favouring vets. We saw a report ahead of the Cavs game that adjustments were going to be made, and they were made. So players like TJ McConnell, Justin Holiday, and Doug McDermott were played over guys like Aaron Holiday and Goga. Is that a concern, guys?
Well, you two both know my thoughts on Aaron Holiday. I'm obviously not as high on him. I've kind of beaten that drum to death. But I've said apart from Vic, our biggest concern this year was going to be our bench production, and that seems after 2 games it's probably going to be true. For some reason, we rarely have good bench production any season. Like I remember saying, Lance is probably our best bench performer and has been for a while. Yep. I want to read out a quote that Larry Bird said about Aaron Holiday, and that's the belief is that Aaron Holiday is the future for the Pacers. He's a potential all-star. And there's also another little tidbit about him saying he's untradeable. So that is such big words to say about someone who hasn't shown anything. And although I don't think he deserved a DNP against Cleveland, Game one, I couldn't be more unimpressed with him. Pre-season, he didn't do too well, and then he takes 6 shots in 7 minutes, and D Rose burnt him. I know D Rose still did well on McConnell and Brogdon as well, but I'm getting concerned for Holiday and Leaf. They're the 2 bench players I'm getting concerned. Getting closer to the trade deadline next year, what Pritchard does with those 2 players.
I think, though, it's interesting because Holiday's clearly a volume sort of shooter and scorer off the bench. He clearly likes to take a lot of shots. I mean, obviously, in the game against Detroit, unfortunately, he wasn't able to make one, but that's his game. He likes to score based off a lot of shots, and he may not necessarily be as efficient as you'd like him to be, but he also is willing, as we've said many times, he's willing to take the big shot when other players aren't necessarily. So I think that's where he adds value to the team. What concerns me is that the guys that are those, to use a ringer term, irrational confidence sort of guys that make up a part of your roster, can also be pretty delicate in terms of how they handle feedback and criticism and lack of opportunity. So, I'm just spitballing here, but is the competition with McConnell and is the sudden sort of playing of McConnell over Holiday potentially hurting Holiday's confidence?
Yeah, I think it is. I think most of the Pacers players, because they're young, they're all based on confidence. We've seen that with Turner in the past. And I think Aaron's no different. I mean, we've talked about it before. He goes 100% probably too often, I think. And I think he just tries to play out of his own skin sometimes. But I still think he has a ton of potential. The Pacers are obviously high on him, but I think it probably is hurting him. It's an ego hit when you get zero minutes in a game, especially when your team's struggling. So, especially when you see Sumner as well, who a lot of people weren't as high on Sumner as they were on Holiday. Sumner's getting starting minutes now, so I'm sure it does hurt Holiday and Leaf as well, same boat.
And I think that the other thing you've got to look at is from the business or the team sort of running the team side of Indiana is that when you've got a guy like Aaron Holiday that has trade value, when you don't play him, when you don't play Goga, guys that you potentially could use to upgrade a position.
Their value just decreases. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It hurts your ability to be able to make those transactional moves. I mean, with all due respect to those guys that we mentioned, McConnell, McDermott, Leaf, these guys don't have a great deal of trade value. You're not going to be able to use those contracts to upgrade significantly without including a pick or a significant asset. So I feel like also we're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul in that if Nate and the organisation don't necessarily believe that Aaron Holiday is the future, is a future starter or is a future key contributor for the team, I feel like you have to put him out there. You have to show other teams what they could get in an Aaron Holiday, and then you have to, if you're going to shop him, you have to maximise his value as much as possible.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, Justin, you mentioned it earlier, the trade deadline is going to be coming up. Leaf was extended, but I can't really see him playing out that contract. So I think when you've got these guys who are young and still have... I still think Aaron Holiday has a high ceiling, but he has a lot to improve on, obviously. So the question does beg, if you're going to play guys like McConnell, McDermott, and these older guys before them, maybe you do have to deal with them. Maybe you have to look around, upgrade the backup point guard or backup small forward, maybe, or power forward. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, a lot of questions.
Some of the ownership has to go on the player, though. I think sometimes people get caught up with, it's Nate's fault, or we're playing veterans over him. Aaron Holiday's got one decision, and that's how you're going to react to Sumner being put in the starting rotation now and McConnell getting the backup minutes over you. It can either go two ways. You can, be upset and moan in the locker room, which I'm not saying he has. I wouldn't have a clue what his demeanor's been, but you got to just come to practice and bust your ass. Earn those minutes, and even if Nate gives you 5 minutes in a blowout, you bust your ass on defense and offense and instill some trust from the coach, which he probably doesn't have right now.
Tough, uncompromising words from Coach Justin.
Yep.
I like it. So we'll move to the second game. Pacers dropped to 0-2, losing to the Cavs 110-99. Unfortunately, after the first quarter, it was all Cleveland, and there was a little bit of catch-up, but overall, the Pacers were unfortunately behind for most of the game. Looking at the bench, we just spoke about the bench. Leaf was 1 for 5, McConnell 1 for 6, McDermott 1 for 5. So bench production just wasn't there. Key statistics for both teams. So, once again, Cleveland shot 50%. That's the second time in 2 games we've allowed an opponent to shoot 50% or more from the field, which is not the Indiana Pacers basketball that we're used to. The Pacers shot 44%, out-rebounded 44-36. Offensive rebounds were 12-6. So, that defensive boards, not crashing the defensive boards that we saw in Game 1, carried over to Game 2. Turnovers were about even. We fouled a lot early. That first quarter was tough to watch, and I think it took the equivalent of 1.5 quarters in another game that was being played at the same time. So, to see all those fouls early on wasn't great and put us on the back foot as well. Alex, what was your talking point coming off that game?
Well, first of all, I just got to give a massive shout out to Malcolm Brogdon, because I know he's definitely listening to this, but he has been nothing short of incredible in these first 2 games. I knew he was going to be good, but I didn't think he was going to be this good. So, quick little shout out there to Malcolm. But again, it was the bench unit was just really just disappointing. Justin Holiday, the only one in double figures, and he still didn't really shoot that well. 2 from 7 from 3. And I just want to raise a point with the backup 4. I really, 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 really want Nate to put Alizé in there instead of TJ. I think you need that energy guy. He's going to bring it on the defensive end. We know he can crush the boards. I absolutely hate seeing him sitting at the end of the bench. I think he's way too good to be. I think he's better than TJ Leaf. I'm not sure if you guys agree, but I think he has to be getting those minutes, to be honest with you.
Yeah, TJ hit a 3. He was 1 for 5 from the field. That was his only field goal. He had 5 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 turnovers. So it wasn't an impressive performance overall. We don't mean to be down on TJ Leaf quite a lot. I think it's more about how much we like Alizé Johnson rather than how much we dislike TJ Leaf. We wish him all the best and hope he plays really well. But I think in terms of energy, Alizé Johnson is clearly an energy guy and can bring that energy off the bench, which can be really contagious. And energy was something that Domas has spoken about not only after the first game in an interview with Chris Denari. He talked about a lack of energy, and he talked about how that needs to be across the team. But even after this game, he sort of reiterated that. A quote with a friend of the podcast, Scott Agnes. I think the most important thing is our energy. I think we're playing soft. That's all of us included. We just need that fight. And I think looking at players that aren't necessarily playing as much that exemplify that sort of fight that we need, one of them is Alizé Johnson, and another one is Goga. I mean, Goga is going to attack a game. He's going to go in. He's clearly fearless. He's got that, youthful exuberance, as does Alizé, that I think we've sort of been lacking. It's been a little bit stagnant. It's been a little bit disjointed. And I think we need a little bit of a positive, useful exuberance in the team. And that's not necessarily Nate playing younger guys over older guys, but in the case of Alizé playing over TJ and Goga getting more minutes, it kind of is, because you need that mix of youth and experience in any team at all. I think it adds to the team.
Yeah, and I was also just going to throw in Jakar Sampson as well. From what we saw in preseason, he actually impressed me a lot. He kind of plays similar to Alizé. He can stretch the floor a little bit, but he bangs inside, gets rebounds, and I think you're exactly right. That's the type of guy you need. That was a great quote, by the way, for Sabonis. And I think he's right. I don't think he's wrong at all. I think that's been a massive issue, especially getting out-rebounded. Those are 2 guys that can really bang down low and grab
Who gets
boards.
rebounds? Alizé gets
Johnson,
rebounds.
Exactly. I think he's like 6'9", maybe, or 6'8". I don't know, but he even in the G League, he was averaging like 12 or 13 boards a game. So I think you got to get him in there, Nate.
He rebounds like his life's dependent on it, and he's shown that in just about every game that I've seen him. Whether it be summer league, whether it be preseason, he flies for rebounds. He somehow knows where they're going to be. That's his, one definable skill. You hear a lot of people saying that to succeed in the NBA, you need one sort of elite skill. Well, Alizé Johnson's rebounding and energy are, approaching elite skills, and I feel like that's what we've been lacking the first couple of games.
Yeah, my little recap on the game. You mentioned before, Adam, we got into foul trouble earlier. I just counted them. We fouled 11 times in the first quarter, 7 times in the first 5 minutes. So it felt like the whole game they were in the bonus. Every time we fouled, they just went to the line. There were ticky-tack fouls. Some of them was, not boxing out properly or just silly reach-in fouls, which really hurt Pacers' momentum. You can't get stops if the other team's just in the penalty, making free throws. So, that's probably the most disappointing I've seen or I've watched a Pacers game in a probably fair few years, to be honest. It just seemed like Cavs were scoring at will. And it's not like we had to guard a Kawhi Leonard or LeBron James on their team. You know, the Cleveland Cavaliers are quite young and they don't really have a star player apart from Kevin Love, who nearly got a triple-double. My main concern is, I mentioned it to you guys as well before the podcast, is the number 1 and number 2 rebounding players in the league, Andre Drummond and Tristan Thompson, and what do they all both have in common?
They played
us.
If you want a big man in your fantasy team, check when they're playing the Pacers and get him in, I think.
Yeah. So, 57 points and 36 rebounds to Drummond and Tristan Thompson throughout the first 2 games. That is insane numbers. That's like Shaquille O'Neal and Karl Malone numbers. But look, to spin it in a positive as well, I know, Alex, you mentioned how impressed you were with Malcolm Brogdon. He was a floor general against Cleveland, like 30 points and 10 assists. Yeah. I, again, can't remember the last time a Pacers point guard had that. You mentioned George Hill earlier to me. I had the odd game of that. Jeff Teague probably rarely got stat lines like that. Just like I said, I still think he's going to be the best point guard since Mark Jackson. He was our best performer today. He's number 2 in the NBA in assists right now per game. I couldn't be more impressed with Brogdon, and that's the one thing keeping me level-headed right now is Brogdon and Oladipo. When they share that court together, I think it's going to be scary good.
For a franchise that's had to sit through Rodney Stuckey and TJ Ford, CJ Watson, some guards that tried really, really hard. Jamal Tinsley, who just kind of left the franchise for a couple of years there. It's fantastic to have a quality point guard finally.
Yeah, definitely. And there were a lot of concerns. I remember a lot of people saying he could only play the 2. So that was probably his biggest concern coming into the season. Could he play the 1? Could he run a team? And yeah, I think he's answered them pretty quickly in this one. So he's been nothing short of incredible.
Yeah, he has. And just to end, you mentioned Kevin Love. Kevin Love really torched Domas, especially early in the first quarter. Domas was in foul trouble. 21 points, 13 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 steals. He's only had 8 field goal attempts, and he ended up with 21 points. So for Domas to actually come out and say that, take ownership and say that all of us have to improve, all of us have to lift the energy, I like seeing that. I think, that's what a leader on the team does. That's what a veteran should do. They need to take ownership of it, not just for everyone else. So the fact that he included himself in not just calling the team out, but calling his own number in that way is great, and that's the sort of leadership that we need from our 2 big men. So I think we'll leave that behind. It's been cathartic. I think we've been able to move past the 2 losses, and we can now move on to what I'm sure will be 2 wins. So the third game against Detroit, happening, I believe, Tuesday Australian time, Monday evening Indiana time. What do you see happening in Game 2 that could enable us to come away with a win this time, Alex?
I really want to be optimistic, but it's going to be it's at Detroit. I think it could be more of the same, to be completely honest with you. I think Drummond, he probably will have something similar to what he had in Game 1, maybe not as absurd of a stat line, but I think hopefully after they took that loss, especially 2 losses in a row, hopefully Domas, you mentioned his comments after the game, hopefully him and Miles actually take that to heart. And, this is a statement game for them. They've already got bullied by Drummond once, so they're not going to want to have that happen twice already in one season, or in 3 games, I should say. So I think that'll be a big test for those 2.
2 words: free Goga. we got to play the big man, and we've got to box out. If there is a case where a shot goes up and there's not a body on Andre Drummond, then that player should immediately be benched for a couple of minutes.
There should be 2 bodies on him.
There should be a team rule where we crash the defensive boards like we've never crashed the defensive boards before. We cannot let that happen again.
Yeah, I'm sure most of our listeners here have played basketball in their life, since we all enjoy watching it so much. And if you play a team twice in a week, or within a certain time period, and someone burns you, you want to go back at them. Miles and Domas should get together before the game and come to an agreement that are not going to let Andre Drummond get over 10 rebounds. That should be their goal for the game. We're going to get him in single-digit rebounds. Because they were embarrassed. Andre Drummond had the stat line of the night in the NBA, basically opening night when all teams played. That's got to hurt. It's all on NBA social media. Everyone was talking about it. it's got to hurt.
I think the other thing is, obviously, we were torched by Luke Kennard. Derek Rose had a great game. So our guards have to bring it defensively. We've got to close out. We've got to play smart defense. And we've got to talk. Like, you know, you talk about, we've all played basketball before. If you don't talk, if you don't call things out, if you don't, you know, understand what you need to do, whether it's switching, whether it's, you know, picking up a player, whether it's calling out someone who's cutting, etc., like, where's the talk? I think that was a theme from a lot of the tweets that I read from people that were in the building, and a lot of tweets that I read from analysts, was that there wasn't a lot of communication. I think Miles looked lost at times as to not really knowing what his teammates were going to do on defense. And we knew going in, we've spoken about it ad nauseum, TJ Warren, not a known defender. He's going to have to step it up this season. Jeremy Lamb, not a known defender. He's going to have to step it up this season. So I think if Jeremy Lamb's back in uniform for the game on Monday night, Tuesday morning our time, I think they really need to make sure that guys like Luke Kennard cannot do what they did in the first instance against Detroit. I think that's a real key for us, is our perimeter defense.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was a massive problem in the first game against the Pistons. We were just giving up open three after open three. Kennard was getting anything he wanted. Rose, even Snell was getting open threes, which is, don't even get me started on Tony Snell. I think Thon Maker was making shots. I mean, there wasn't a guy on the Pistons that we weren't leaving open. I don't think so. Especially for a Pacers team, we've talked about it before. They pride themselves on defense. I'm sure Dan Burke is punching holes in walls right now. And him and McMillan will turn it around, I'm sure. And yeah, like you said, this will be a massive test. And please, if they are getting torched again, why not just put Goga in? He's played 4 minutes in the first two games. Put him in there, try it out. Even if it doesn't work, at least you tried. So, I think you've got to get him in there.
The one time we've seen him was obviously a preseason game, and everyone came away thinking, wow, this guy can really play and he can potentially contribute across this season. Maybe they're easing him in. Maybe he's still got a touch of the injury he was carrying during preseason. We don't know. I don't know who's asking the questions about Goga, but whoever can get Nate before the Detroit game or before the Brooklyn game should really ask, where is he and what can he do? Speaking of a game where he's probably got to play, and a game where perimeter defense is really, really important, we play Brooklyn in the fourth game, and they've got a lot of weapons. I mean, chief among them is Kyrie, a guy that's always played well against the Pacers and always tended to torch us in his days with Boston and Cleveland. But they've got that two-headed monster at center in Jarrett Allen and DeAndre Jordan. They've got Karis LeVert, who can hit a few shots. They've got Spencer Dinwiddie off the bench, so we've got to make sure that we defend. They've got three-point shooting in Joe Harris, so they're a formidable team, and they're a really strong team this year who's probably going to make the playoffs. What's a key in this game for you?
Well, I think it's probably pretty boring to say, but that Brogdon-Irving matchup, that's going to be awesome to watch, to be honest. I'm actually really excited to watch that game. Brooklyn have such a good home atmosphere. The fans are mental. Kyrie's already basically hit a game winner for Brooklyn and scored 50 in game one. So it's going to be interesting to see how we can stop him. Like you mentioned, Adam, he usually does kill the Pacers. So I can't wait to see Brogdon go up against Kyrie. And going into that game, I just hope we're 2-1. If we're 0-3 going into that Brooklyn game, that's when things start to get a bit nervous, and you definitely don't want to drop 0-4. Just looking over the start of our schedule, we all know it's weak. This is when we should be building wins for when Oladipo comes back. And right now, that Detroit game going into the Brooklyn games, like as silly as it sounds, is near a must-win.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if you lose that Pistons game, going into Brooklyn, is going to be just almost impossible. Kyrie's cooking early on, like you said. He's pulling out street moves, trying to hit game winners, doing 360s on the ground or something. But I back Brogdon in that matchup. I think I'm not going to say he's going to shut him down to 10 or 15 points, but I don't think Kyrie will be going for 30, 35 or anything crazy like that. But I think the onus in that game is going to be on Lamb. It's going to be on Warren to stop guys like you mentioned, Joe Harris, Karis LeVert, Dinwiddie. So they're really deep. Yeah, Torian Prince as well. He's been cooking from deep. So it's going to be really on. Even Doug McDermott, he stepped up his defense, I know, but you'd still say he's a liability on that end. So, yeah, it's going to be on the perimeter guys to really shut Brooklyn's depth down in that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna zag a little bit and say that it's rebounding again. I mean, looking at Brooklyn's two centers like Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan. Jordan's led the league in rebounding quite a few years. Allen's always a good rebounder, and he averages almost double digits, if not double digits. And you even look at their recent game against New York. Both Jordan and Allen both had 11 rebounds. Prince had 6. Kurucs had 4, Joe Harris had 4, so they've got a few people that can get some rebounds up and down their lineup, and I feel like if there's another point of emphasis, if we can string together a really good rebounding performance against Detroit, we have to back that up against a team with 2, not just okay centers, but starting caliber NBA centers, and we've got 2 starting caliber NBA centers in our starting lineup. So by rights, it should be a really good matchup, but we've got to win the rebounding battle in that game too.
Yeah, I was trying to find the quote then. I think it was made by Miles Turner or Brogdon, where they're really shouting out the leadership. Who's the leader of this team with Oladipo out? I think it was Brogdon said, we can't be scared to get on each other when someone makes a mistake or someone's not there defensively. What's happening in the locker room right now? Or who's going to be that leader to go up to someone and say that wasn't acceptable? I don't know who it is right now. Oladipo, you can see him in game 1. He was motivating the team on the bench, but it is a different feeling when you're playing versus when you're out. So that's my big concern as well. We mentioned how much Miles has grown through Team USA early this year and even in the preseason, and him maybe being the face of the franchise when Vic's out. He's got to step up to the plate now. He's got to come to that Detroit matchup against Drummond and really show a fierce attack on the rebounds. And I'm really looking forward to how the Pacers respond, because Detroit and Cleveland, 2 losses. People are starting to question the Pacers. I've got messages from friends going, what's happening with Pacers? Or, oh, geez, that when you actually look at them on paper, they're actually not that good. So people are starting to hone in, and it's time we kind of put up or shut up now.
Look, I think the pressure's good. Ultimately, we say that if it's, everyone always says pressure makes diamonds. So we need that pressure around the team, and the team need to understand that the expectations for this team are playoffs, and they're not just playoffs.
Minimum.
They're
First-round win.
They're a first-round win.
Yeah.
We need to avenge, the sweep from last season. And this roster was put together with the intention of winning games. And at the moment, they have failed to do that to start the season. So that will need to change really quickly, or, trade rumors start coming up, coaching pressure starts happening. We know the effect of multiple losses on any sort of team, and it's felt through the entire organization. And, no one wants to see the Pacers win as, more than the 3 of us. But at the same time, we have to be really frank about the shortcomings of this team and who needs to step up. And at the moment, it's just about everyone.
Yeah, I think the NBA has changed in a way this year so early on that I think all teams are so even. All teams have a few good players where it's just down to who plays harder. It's kind of like Aussie rules for us here in Australia, where usually the skill level doesn't actually matter that much. It's more who plays harder, who
turned up.
Yeah, who turned up. And, in the Detroit and Cleveland game, who played harder? Detroit and Cleveland. Phoenix beat the LA Clippers.
Yeah.
You can't say they're more talented than the Clippers. It's who plays harder on the night. I think the NBA is more going towards that, where in the past it was, you're not going to beat Steph Curry, Clay, and KD, and you're not going to beat LeBron, Bosh, and Wade. Now it's the whole league is so even where, if you don't show up on a night, you're going to get beaten by 20.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who you're playing. You could be playing the Hornets, the Wizards, it doesn't matter. The Pacers, they're capable of losing on any given night. So I think effort, we've talked about it many times already, but the Sabonis, he mentioned that. I think that's absolutely huge, and they're going to have to up it in these next coming games.
And you've only got to look at the top of the standings. Atlanta 2-0, Miami 2-0. You look at the top of the West. You've got the Spurs that are 2-0. None of these teams have world-class, all NBA type players that have played in their first couple of games, like DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge are, borderline, if not all-stars. Jimmy Butler was missing for Miami. Trae Young's been out of control for Atlanta. but you wouldn't say that he's necessarily a world-class player at this point. He could be by the middle of this season. He could be right now. We just may not know it. But, you've got these teams that, they've beaten good opponents.
Phoenix could be 3-0.
Yeah,
it should be 3-0, yeah. So,
unbelievable. So,
Alex, was that a compliment about Phoenix?
Ricky Rubio was... No. Notice how Ricky Rubio was out against the Clippers and they get the win. So I'm still going to get my Rubio slander in. Don't worry about that.
I think all live episodes you have to get Rubio slander in.
I've missed out. When we've been interviewing people, I haven't been able to get to the end. So it's been nice to...
It's not really appropriate to ask Jeremiah Johnson his opinion on Ricky Rubio at this point, I don't think. But, look, you look at the sides that have got a couple of wins, and they're not necessarily the teams that have world-class All-NBA, MVP caliber players in a lot of instances. So it is about effort. It is about, it's about little things. What do coaches always say from young basketball teams? Rebounding, defense, effort, all these things that the Pacers haven't necessarily been able to put together the first two games, and it showed.
Yeah, it's the fundamental things. And that's the things that you should be doing, even without chemistry or without any of that. 9 new players, doesn't matter. You should be doing the fundamentals right no matter what, to be honest. So, yeah.
So it's been a tough week and a tough first couple of games for the Pacers. I think all of us can agree that we expected a little bit more from the team, but we're still ultra optimistic about the season. We haven't thrown the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, at this stage. And we're optimistic that we can come away with the very least one of the next two games, if not two. And we look forward to bringing you a next episode when we're 2-2. I think we'll plan to bring you the next episode after the Brooklyn game. Yep. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for listening to the last couple of interview episodes that we've had. We've really appreciated having Jeremiah Johnson and Scott Agnes and Pat Boylan on the podcast. It's been fantastic to see the support from the Indiana Pacers and those around them. But I think now's the time for us to actually get something done in terms of a win. Guys, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just, fingers crossed. My only concern was just thinking I really don't want this team to be like the Boston Celtics last year, where we're talented on paper, but they just don't kind of get it together. They don't gel well. That's my early concern. But like I said, positively, thinking I can't wait till Oladipo gets back, as we all can't. Him and Brogdon sharing the floor, it's going to be scary for the NBA how well they can be. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how we come back to this Detroit game. It's going to be a big game for me personally to see if we're 1-2 or 0-3. To see how Miles attacks Drummond, like I said earlier. I've circled that, and I'm going to be watching it very closely.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I'm still very excited for the season. I'm probably more optimistic than most about anything when it comes to the Pacers. So, I mean, I'm not going to say we're a 50-win team, but I think we can still get to 45, 46. And, I'm not really that worried, to be honest with you. It's 2 games in, so I think Pacers fans need to just chill out a little bit on the Fire Nate tweets as well. We've been seeing that on Twitter.
There's a lot of negativity on Twitter right now, guys. Calm down.
If Nate McMillan gets a Twitter, he's going to have the shock of his life. But
yeah, I don't think any of us are on the Fire Nate bandwagon. We understand it's
ridiculous.
A long season. 2 games out of 82. Let's see how we go after Game 5, Game 10, Game 15, Game 20. Then we can start talking.
40 games in.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you can make any sort of judgment after 2 games, but seriously, free Goga. All right, guys. Thanks very much for joining us on the Paceroos, and we'll see you next week.